Tells us we're on here.
Hey everyone, it's Travis. We're with Texas Specialty Hunts. Welcome to the live show on Thursdays. I've got our executive chef Patrick Pinkston with us tonight. I'll give you guys a few minutes to get everything lined out. But while you're doing that, I'd like to see where everybody's from tonight. So give us some comments on where you're viewing from tonight, as well as if you have any questions for us. Feel free to always ask a question because we like that in our show. That's how we make things better for you guys when you get here. So, like I said, this is our executive chef, Patrick Pinkston. He's been with Texas Specialty Hunts for a long time. He's been a very valuable asset to the company. He provides all our guests with our meals. He takes care of the lodge. He greets all the people when they're there. And he makes sure you guys have good food at the lodge. So I'll let Patrick take it from there.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you all. From the Adirondacks. Very nice. Nice to see you, Mr. Winans. Like Travis said, I am the executive chef, the chef de cuisine. I set the menus. I do a lot of different things, but my main goal is when you guys show up to the ranch and you come to check it out, is to make sure you have a good time. You know, we want you to go out and we want you to shoot critters. We want you to shoot a lot of pigs if you're heli hunting. We want you to enjoy the ranch. The ranch is, it's been my home for 6 years, and it means a lot to me to be part of it. And then the lodgings and the accommodations, we want to make sure that they're top notch and that you don't have any problems. So that way, when you pull up and you get settled in, you're in enjoyment mode. And that's really what we'd like to have. Tonight, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about some of the things that I do food-wise, how I plan my menus, a little bit, and then I'm going to kind of follow things and look at the questions as we go. So what we try to do there is I set the menus around what type of hunting you're doing and how long you're going to be there generally, because I have clients that like to come in and exotic hunt or do whitetails, and then we have the guys that come in for helicopter pig hunts. So depending on how many nights you're lodging and what hunting venue you're going to end up at, that's sort of how I plan my meals.
Because they always change. Because
yes,
helicopter hunts take place at a different time. The exotic hunts, the predator hunts, the whitetail hunts. So you have to adjust your schedule to meet their needs.
Right.
Because in a heli hunt, they're leaving super early. They're going to be out all day, and they're going to be back late afternoon. So tell us a little bit about how you structure a helicopter hunt and keeping these guys fed and keeping everything so great as you do.
Okay, well, thank you. What I try to do is what I look at is, like when we're going to do a helicopter hunt, most of my guests arrive in the early afternoon or late afternoon. So I try to set up a really nice meal. Usually my opening night, I like to show off a little bit. I never tell anybody what. Don't be surprised if you show up and I don't tell you what you're having. Sometimes I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but that's not true. I know what I'm going to do, but I like to make it a mystery. I like to keep you on your feet a little bit. But usually what we'll do is we'll come in, we'll have dinner, we'll have cocktails, we'll have dinner, we'll have desserts. The guys will sit out when the weather is cooler. We'll sit out around the fire and have some cocktails and share stories and have a nice time. And then in the mornings, because most of the time, especially at this time of year, as we get into the fall and the weather starts getting cooler, then the departure times for the helicopter pig hunts are just a little bit later in the mornings. But right now, figure we've got, a 4-hour window between the time the sun comes up till 11 or noon to shoot pigs. And then the rest of the day, the pigs are hiding under the trees and trying to stay cool like any rational being would.
Like us.
Yeah, like we do. I mean, come 11:30, find me under the air conditioner or under the shade tree. So what I do in the mornings when you guys come in, I have a nice I have a nice little continental breakfast set up. I've got assorted pastries. Right now, I'm doing a lot of different fruits, especially. This is just a wonderful time in Texas because it's melon season. And I'm just getting my hands on some of the nicest watermelon and the sweetest, juiciest cantaloupes that I've been able to get in a while. A lot of beautiful fresh tomatoes. So you come in the morning, we've got a nice coffee set up for you. We use a really nice coffee that's an independent roast that comes out of Brenham, Texas, if I remember correctly. It's a nice dark roasted coffee. So we get you your coffee, we get you your pastries. And while you guys are kind of getting woke up and getting ready to go and getting pumped up to go, then I'll put together some type of a breakfast to take with you. And most of the time it's can be a variety of 4 or 5 different breakfast tacos. A lot of the other times I will do breakfast sandwiches or ham and cheese croissants, bacon, egg, and cheese croissants. I vary it from group to group.
So while Jim Huntley is getting the motor coach ready, which is what you guys take on the helicopter hunts, like I said before, you guys have been here. You know what the motor coach is all about. But those of you who haven't been here, we have a 40-foot motor coach, Wi-Fi, satellite TV, bathroom, shower. So while Jim and everyone else is getting the motor coach ready, Patrick is getting your on-the-go breakfast. So he'll get your on-the-go breakfast in the motor coach. We'll get you guys loaded up in a motor coach, and you can talk about the rest of the day. But I just want to bring up the motor coach because that way they know they're going to be on the go.
Yes. And then when you're on the coach, you'll have your breakfast to take with you. And then usually for most of the hunts that are usually 3 or 4 hours that you guys are going to take the coach and you're going to be out there for a while, there's usually going to be a little bit of a break in the action to give the helicopter pilot a chance to kind of relax for a few minutes and take care of whatever business he needs to. And then we don't want you to starve. And when you're on the coach, I mean, you've got tons of snacks. We try to keep it pretty well loaded. You've got beverages, you've got chips, you've got salsas.
And everybody always asks, why here in Texas, what's the difference between a taco and a burrito? And they also say, why do you Texans, you call these breakfast burritos, but they don't have any eggs in them. A lot of them don't. A lot of times we'll do asada, carne asada, or something like that. Like us in Texas, that's what we eat for breakfast. But a lot of people from up north, they're used to egg, sausage, and bacon. They call that a breakfast burrito.
Yes.
So what's the difference between a taco and a burrito in Texas, and why do we do our burritos like we do?
Okay. The primary difference, in my humble opinion, between a burrito and a taco, and if you look at most burritos, most people, you go into a 7-Eleven and you buy yourself a bean and cheese burrito with jalapenos and you throw that baby in the microwave. You never see them opened up. And so the way it was explained to me by one of my good chef friends years ago, and generally anything that's completely folded and rolled up, in my book, is a burrito. Tacos are generally open. Most people, I guess, when they get my breakfast tacos, they think they're burritos because by the time I load them up with, and I have carne asada, which is basically, it's probably one of the most popular tacos you're going to get in all of Texas. Anybody that's Hispanic, anybody that's white in a Hispanic area, anybody that's lived in a major Texas city that eats tacos, carne asadas, it's just like a Spanish stewed meat, but it's tender. We cook it for 6 or 7 hours. It's wonderful. It's got beautiful flavor to it, and it's got this thick gravy-like sauce. And then you come in and you load that baby with a little shredded Monterey Jack, and you roll that up. Now, if I'm working with a bunch of my Hispanic colleagues, I won't insult them because then you open that baby up and you throw some cilantro and onion and a little limon in there, and maybe a couple if you're fortunate enough to get little chili piquins, or a nice fresh jalapeno that goes really good with the carne.
And if you got the sauce the night before,
yes.
Which, it happens around the campfire. If you're on the sauce the next day.
Yes.
Nothing better than a little grease and Mexican food.
Yes. And I mean, I honed my Spanish skills on the west side. I don't know if this is politically correct or not, but on the west side of San Antonio. And west side of San Antonio is an old Hispanic area. One of the chefs when I was in culinary school that hired me, I trained under him, and we had our main catering kitchen on the west side of San Antonio. So generally, you don't see a lot of Anglos, as I'm called here in Texas. You don't see a lot of Anglos or Wetos on the west side. And I worked with my chef over there for almost 7 years. So I got pretty accustomed to doing Tex-Mex stuff and Mexican themed stuff. And I think I do a pretty good job of it. I know he and his family thought so. And it is, it's centered around because everybody likes to go out and party at night, and it's quick, it's easy, and it hits the spot in the morning when you've got a massive hangover.
And it works great. So,
it really does, and it's convenient, and guys like it.
So then we get done with breakfast, and then you pack a field lunch. So the field lunch, typically Patrick does a really nice job and gives you, you can hit the lunch real quick, and then we'll get back to the lodge after that.
Okay. My field lunches, I vary quite a bit because usually it's a box lunch, but I jazz it up and make it look nice. Everything that I put in my field lunches is generally from scratch. I bake my own brownies, my own lemon bars, my own raspberry bars, my own cookies. So when you get it, it's not just going to be like a bag lunch. I generally make my own focaccia. If I have time, I like to do ciabattas, or I get ciabattas. I have some onion rolls that I get from a bakery in San Angelo, and it can be anything from pulled pork to Philly cheesesteak sandwiches. I like to throw Reubens out there. Sometimes I'll do ham and cheese sandwiches as well. Generally, a lot of club sandwiches, a lot of different variations on a traditional club sandwich. And then I've got 3 or 4 potato salads that I make. I've got a pasta salad that's one of my staple recipes and he'll tell you, I'm not an ego guy, but people love my pasta salad. It's a recipe that I've gotten from a very good friend of mine, and I've never swayed from the recipe over the last 10 years that I use it because I don't think I can improve it in any way. And so you get that, and I mean, you're going to eat good. The one thing you won't have a problem here, if you walk away from our ranch and you're hungry, then I've done something wrong, and we need to know.
That's not going to be an issue. So then, when you do your helicopter hunt, you have your lunch, you finish up your helicopter hunt early afternoon, and then Jim will get you back in the motor coach. We'll come back to the ranch. Generally, we'll ride around the ranch, look at exotics, we'll look at whitetails, etc. Meanwhile, Patrick's in the kitchen prepping dinner for that night. And typically, if you're there for 2 nights, he usually does a Texas barbecue one night, or he'll do ribeyes, fillets, blah, blah, blah. But he was going to talk about Patrick is a very, very good barbecue chef. And through the course of myself hunting for the last 29 years professionally, I've had several different chefs work for me and the business. And traditionally, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say most trained chefs are not barbecue guys. Is that right or wrong?
Well, yeah,
or is it just the guys that I hire?
Well, it could be both because there's a lot of work involved in barbecue. And not saying that the guys weren't hard work.
I don't think they know how to run a pit.
No, it takes practice. It probably took me a good 10 years to finally get my barbecue to where I enjoy it and I like what I do. But I had to go through a lot of trial and errors. I mean,
so it's become a big thing at Texas Specialty Hunt, Patrick Barbecue, because it is a traditional Texas barbecue. People come, and the people that come to our ranch over and over, hunt with us multiple times a year, they always request, make sure Patrick's doing the Texas barbecue. So what is Texas barbecue? Well,
in the great state of Texas, and now I am a native-born Texan, but I grew up I was a military brat, lived around the world, but I kind of grew up in the St. Louis, Missouri area, and so I'm more familiar with that type of barbecue. It's a lot of coals, a lot of slow cooking of the meats, Kansas City style barbecue, but it's always been centered more. The meat was always of quality and always supposed to be good. But then it comes down to sauces. Where Texas style barbecue, most Texans go with it's all more about the seasoning of the meat and how you cook the meat and the types of wood that you use. Of course, mesquite in Texas is king. At our ranch, mesquite is definitely king because I can walk out my back door, I can walk 10 feet, and I've got mesquite.
Patrick lives at the ranch, so he gets a full dose.
Yeah, and if you want mesquite, and we run a special, we run the weekly special on cactus too. So we've got plenty of mesquite, plenty of mesquite, and right now we're getting prickly pears. So feel free to pick some up yourself. So in Texas, it's always been more about the slow cooking and the smoking of the meats and the flavor that you can use, that you can infuse into that with the type of, I guess, how, there's so many different ways to cook a brisket. I try to go for a slow, cooler smoke. I've always liked the slow, cold smoking process because that way I can keep my temperatures. I like to maintain my cooking temperature right around between 180 to 250 degrees, and if I'm in there, I'm happy. I just got a new mesquite smoker, a new wood smoker, so I'm getting that dialed in, and I'm happy with the results that I get from it. But it's a process, you get out there, and usually when the time you guys roll out the door to go do a hunt, I'm out there stoking my fire, and usually I'll throw that brisket on, usually no later than 7 o'clock in the morning, and I will keep that on until most of the time about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And then when it's reached the temperature, which I like to pull my meat off the smoker around 175, 180. Now, that's me. In Texas, there are about 2,000 ways to smoke a brisket. And there are about 20 million Bubbas here that all have their own ways of smoking briskets. And it's a ritual. It's a tradition. It's a very important thing of the Texas lifestyle. And I understand that and I appreciate it, but then I have other things to focus on because I want the rest of the meal to go well. So with Texas barbecue, you've got your brisket, your slow cooked brisket, and then depending on where you go in Texas, it can be primarily brisket and sausage, brisket and chicken, brisket and pork, and I mean it can be pork chops. Primarily if you get the pork, I've seen some places just do like pork loin on the side with that. It could be pork tenderloin even. And then usually, you go with, you've got your big chicken breasts or your chicken thighs that go with that. And what I found was over the years, if I give you brisket, chicken, and sausage, most people, you look at the plate, it doesn't look like a lot of food, but then when you eat it, it's a lot of food. And most people generally didn't eat all 3 different meats that I put on. So 90% of the time I do chicken and the brisket and sausage.
So when you come to the ranch and you want, let's just say you're going to do 2 nights, and you want ribs, you might ask Patrick before you come, hey, instead of brisket, we want ribs. So primarily what we do is we do brisket, we do ribs, and we do sausage.
Yes.
And the combination is usually brisket and sausage or ribs and sausage.
Right.
Because that's what most people that come, that's what they want. Our reoccurring customers, that's what they say time and time again. Let's do brisket and sausage. Next time we'll do ribs and sausage.
Sure. And, the ribs, I like the St. Louis style, the St. Louis cut of ribs. A lot of people, they all lean towards baby back ribs, and they're nice, but I want people to eat. Baby back ribs, you get a little meat, then you got to move on to the next rib. I want a nice rib to complement the brisket that I'm putting out. Yes.
That's what we do, pork ribs.
Unless occasionally I will do braised short ribs, which are generally a center cut beef rib that I use.
I find that he does short ribs because that's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So anyway, enough on barbecue. I think everybody kind of got a gist of Patrick Fowler's an excellent brisket.
Yeah, Patrick Fowler knows an excellent brisket because he's a fine chef in his own right. So I bow to Mr. Fowler.
It kind of varies. So if you do a 2-night hunt, we try to always do 1 night of Texas barbecue for most guys. If they come in for 1 night, we'll try to do a barbecue or we'll do a ribeye or something like that. But some guys stay for 5 nights. So Patrick really has to get creative on a 5-night hunt. Like 1 night he may do barbecue, the next night he may do fish, the next night he might do pork loin, he might do the
cedar plank salmon. When we talk about the fish, I've got a pork chop.
What's the
the chicken roulade.
No, the beef Wellington.
Oh, yeah, I do beef
Beef
Wellingtons.
Wellington. It's very good. I like beef.
Yeah,
Wellington.
I do an individual beef Wellington because I found it just looks nicer and it's a tighter presentation for me.
Brett Scarver's with us.
Hi, Brett. How are you? I'm glad you're hungry, sir. I'm hungry. Well, I've had a little bit to eat so far. I'm doing good. The big thing, another thing that the guys like is I have a place and they cut a nice, it's almost 1 3/4 bone-in center cut pork chop, and it's wonderful. We talk about like the ribeyes, my steaks. A few years ago, I was looking for a way to kind of perfect and make my steak cooking consistent. So I'm a big believer in sous vide. And if you walk into my kitchen and I'm doing sous vide or I'm doing steaks, chances are you'll walk in and you'll see my immersion circulator set up. I've got a really nice vacuum sealer. I season everything up and I sous vide my steaks for a couple of hours. It ensures it's a beautiful process because it locks in the temperature on the steaks and it keeps in all the flavor and all the moisture and all the juices. And so that way, when I'm ready to serve, I go out a few minutes before I'm ready to serve a meal. I put them out on my gas grill and we sear those bad boys off at 700 degrees. And so you get a really excellent, very consistent steak. And I use the same process with the bone-in pork chops. People look at the bone-in pork chops and the size of the chop will probably cover at least a good third, almost half of the plate when I put it out. And they're this thick. They're almost 2 inches thick. And with that bone, they look intimidating. They look imposing. But a lot of it's bone, but the flavor of the meat that you get, especially close to the bone, that combination of the white meat and the darker meats in the pork loin on that chop and the fats, and I really make an effort to make sure that they're cooked at the proper temperature. So I like to pull them off maybe right around 135 degrees, and they're still they're to die for. I serve those a lot of times with the scalloped or gratin potatoes, and those complement those things really well. We do a lot of rice dishes. I try to incorporate as much local produce and as much Texas grown product and Texas raised product that I possibly can in most of the dishes I get at the ranch. It's been a little interesting over the last couple of months because of the availability and the demand because of what we're all going through right now. But generally it hasn't been an issue. It looks like it's stabilized, and what's really nice is the costs have come down and the availability is there again.
So if you come to the ranch, this is what you'll be eating, and that's the purpose of this TV show, is to introduce you to Patrick, so you'll know who you're going to see when you can match name to the face, and you'll know Patrick once you arrive at the ranch. You guys have already been here. You know Patrick. You know his food. It speaks for itself. So all of our meals at the ranch are plated. We try not to do any buffet type meals unless we get into very large groups of, like, say, 20 people. If it's 1 to 10 people, it's all plated and it's brought to you at the table. And I never was a big fan of buffets, so we've always done plated food, and Patrick does a really nice job plating the food. And so, if you guys want to bring your customers or whatever, that's what they can expect. He does really good desserts. If you want to knock on a couple of desserts really quickly, because we're pretty long at a time, 23 minutes. So.
Okay. I'm looking at the wrong clock. Okay. My desserts, I do all my desserts pretty much from scratch. I've got a creme brulee I'll put against anybody in the country. It's a very simple recipe, but it yields a spectacular creme brulee. The texture, the flavor is wonderful. I got a couple of varieties of the flavor. I do a flan that's really nice with certain dishes. I guess one of the recipes that I'm known for at the ranch is the smashed pumpkin cake, which I serve with a burnt butter icing that goes with it, and it complements it, because when you think of the pumpkin cake, don't think of like pumpkin pie and the extra heavy spices that you'd get in a pumpkin pie, because the pumpkin that's in the cake with the vanilla and the rest of the ingredients give it. It's a moist cake. It's a very moist cake. It's got a lot of flavor, but it's not overpowering with like pumpkin spices, especially like with. Oh, this is where it happens when you get old. I'll think of it here in a second. But the burnt butter icing goes really good with that. Sometimes I'll serve it with ice cream. Another cake that I've just developed that I like is I was playing with an orange cake recipe. And I kept looking at it and I kept thinking, well, I'm going to do an orange glaze or something. And I don't know why it hit me like out of the blue. Hey, dummy, vanilla ice cream. We get some of the best ice cream in Texas comes from Bluebell Ice Cream, another Brenham, Texas product. And Bluebell's ice cream is every bit as good as it is. Do I cook pork steaks? I sell that real quick. I can get them here, but pork steaks is more of a. When I grew up in St. Louis, we ate a lot of pork steaks because we was po. You get the Ball's barbecue sauce in the pork steaks, and you get that grill going. I like pork steaks, but I really haven't. I don't really, I probably need to do some
bone-in pork chops.
Yeah, we do the pork chops, but
bone-in, and they're that big.
I'll have to do some pork steaks for you. But the dessert I was talking about is the orange cake with the Bluebell vanilla bean ice cream, and I kind of layered in shingles. And believe it or not, it tastes like one of those lovely dreamsicles that I adore. I love popsicles. I keep a bunch of them in the freezer for the summer, and I like that combination. The desserts are always going to be good. I vary the desserts up. I've got a couple of different pies. I've got a key lime pie that I do. I've got a grasshopper pie that I do. I think I make a pretty darn good tiramisu as well that I like to throw out.
You know what I'd like to know is, so this whole evolution of beef and exotic. So what I'd like to know from everyone out there that's with us, and then, if you're not with us now, you're going to go back and watch it later. What we'd like to know is, would you like to see some exotic served on the menu? So this is getting to be a big thing now with the health craze, and all of our exotics they live on the land. We don't give them any drugs. We don't give them any hormones. So they're basically grass-fed beef that have very little intermuscular fat. So they're very healthy, good for you. Everybody always asks me, what's the best? And so my best top choices are any type of oryx species. There's 5 different oryx species. Any of those are great. The axis, the black buck, and the nilgai.
Yes.
Those to me are the 9 animals that taste the best to me. And,
absolutely.
And it doesn't take a rocket science or a trained chef like you to cook them.
No.
Some of this stuff is very challenging to cook. These animals, they're good no matter who cooks them. Yeah,
they really are. And the trick is not overcooking them. As I found with most of the exotic species and even venison, a lot of people have a tendency to overcook them, and you lose a lot of the flavor and it changes the texture. But up until I had an oryx, the first time I got my hands on some oryx was about 3 years ago. I always thought that the backstrap or the tenderloins off of the black buck, those were always one of my favorites because it's this beautiful deep red meat. There's not a lot of fat in it, but the texture and the flavor, most of these animals, these exotic species, do not taste gamey at all.
No, they taste zero game.
Yeah,
me, I don't. I'm not a big lamb fan. I'm not a big.
No, he does not like lamb.
I don't like whitetail. I'm pretty iffy on, but this exotic stuff that I mentioned, I'll eat it any day. I really like it. So what we didn't learn from you is where you studied.
Well, for those of you, let's see, what do I got here? I got a minute left. Well, I went to school in San Antonio. I went to culinary school after I decided that it was time to grow up and I couldn't play hockey and be a bum anymore. I decided to do the culinary school route. And where I really wanted to go to school was up in Rhode Island. But unfortunately, I was limited on the resources, so I went to St. Philip's in San Antonio. At that time, they had one of the top culinary programs in the country for community college. The price was reasonable. the information and knowledge and the techniques that I learned there. I had some really good chefs there that saw things in me that I didn't quite see, and so they helped kind of push me in the right direction. So I went to school there. I trained under under Chef Johnny Hernandez, and all of you who are foodies, especially if you're familiar with Texas cuisine, you should have a good idea who Johnny Hernandez is. Johnny is he's an amazing human being. I love him like a brother, but he kept me under his wing for a long time and taught me a lot about food and a lot of people and about serving food and producing food. And Johnny's just one of the top guys in San Antonio. I worked for the late Christopher Stonecipher for 2 years, and Christopher, bless his soul, he was an artist, and he was very passionate about the food and what he did. And, I was executive chef at the AT&T Center for the Spurs and for the San Antonio Rampage. Is that Texas thing, that fur, instead of saying for, or is it a Midwestern thing? So I worked for the Spurs for 2 years.
I think it's a Texas thing.
Yeah, I'm redeveloping and
kind of like fixing to
reacquiring. I'm looking how gray my beard is. I look like a schnauzer. I got schnauzer's butt on.
So I need to recap last Friday real quick. So it's not about food, but
right. No, please.
Do you have anything else on education, or are you good?
No, I'm good.
I just wanted everyone to know where you trained,
sure,
what your experience was, and who your mentors were.
Sure.
When you were coming through the road.
And when you come in to see me, you're going to hear it all in the morning anyway, because I'm espressoed up in the morning.
Yeah, if you want to hear more, after your dinner, Patrick will come out, have a glass of wine with you, and he'll tell you more about cooking. And he's a pretty neat guy. He's got a lot of good stories, and everyone likes good food. So it's a good opportunity for you to sit by the campfire and talk to Patrick about food.
Hi, Charles. How are you tonight, sir? It's nice to see you.
Hi, Charles. Last Friday. So last Friday, I did a Facebook Live, and it was a bit of a disaster. But we started really early. What happened was I had a landowner call kind of at the last minute, and he was having a coyote problem. So he found some black buck that this coyote had been eating on, and a calf that these coyotes have been eating on. So what we do for our ranchers is we go and help them with the situation. So this was not a commercial hunt with our paid hunters. This was a totally different thing. Some of the guys were commenting, where are all the pigs? Why aren't y'all shooting pigs? Well, that's not what it's all about that Friday. So what we did, Garrett and I went and we flew over to this ranch. We picked up the landowner. The landowner was in the helicopter with us. And so this particular ranch was a pretty big ranch. And so it took us quite a while to fly it. And I was trying to give you guys some Facebook Live video, but, I'm going off the feed of my cell phone, and the coverage wasn't great. So I wanted to let you know what happened. So we picked the landowner up, we go out, and we shot a few coyotes in the morning, and we shot a couple of bobcats. So I think we flew for 4 or 5 hours. In the course of 4 or 5 hours, we ended up shooting 2 bobcats, 10 coyotes, and 12 pigs. And so now, hopefully, this guy will have not as many problems with his black buck or his calves. It was kind of a shocker because it was in Runnels County, and they traditionally don't have a lot of coyotes. Like when you get on the Pecos, Balmorhea area, or up north towards La Mesa, Lubbock, Midland, Odessa, West Texas, or even further west. We've had days where we've shot 60 or 70 coyotes out there, but this was Runnels County, and we killed 10 coyotes in 4 or 5 hours. So, they're getting to be a big problem over there. But at the end of the day, I just want to tell you guys what I was doing and why we weren't concentrating on pigs and why I was in the helicopter and the landowner was in the helicopter. So this is a service that we provide to our landowners to help them out. Because like I say, most of these ranches that we are allowed to hunt on are all working ranches, meaning the families, the generations all have their income from cattle, sheep, or goats. So that's what went on there. Let's see, what else was I going to talk about tonight? I mentioned machine guns, but I think we'll leave that for another day. It was just kind of a catchy thing of barbecue and machine guns, because that's what we do, right?
Yeah, we
don't
do.
necessarily shoot machine guns out of a helicopter because we found out that doesn't work real well. We did try it, and it doesn't work out so good. So we stick to the AR-15s and 12 gauge.
Yep.
But Patrick, I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on tonight. And what we're going to do in the future is we're actually going to go into Patrick's kitchen and into the pavilion where we serve our meals, and we're going to do a live TV show from there. Tonight, I just want to
I'll let Justin Wilson, I might add.
I just want to introduce you guys to Patrick, and so you can match a name with a face, because you have his name on all the booking sheets, and now you know who Patrick is, where he came from, what his education is, and what his kind of goals are for when you guys are at the ranch. So I guess we'll leave it at that. I think next week what we're going to do, and this is going to be pretty important to a lot of people, but next week we're going to talk about Texas whitetail. So that'll be a big discussion. We're going to talk about high fence hunts. We're going to talk about low fence hunts, what we offer, why we do what we do, evolution of whitetail hunting in Texas. You know, I've been doing it for 29 years, and and you've seen it. I mean,
oh yeah,
you've been there the whole time.
Yeah,
you've seen
absolutely.
It go from here to here. So,
oh my God,
you know what's going on there.
Yeah, some of the bucks that we have right now, the 3 and 4 year olds, they're amazing looking animals. I can't get over how big they are now.
So next week we're going to do Texas whitetails. So be sure to tune in next week. I'll try to do it Thursday again at 7:00. But that's about it. Thanks again, Patrick. Thank you guys for tuning in. If
Thanks for watching.
Be sure to reach out to Mercy and Rob. You've got their number, 515-0175, area code 325. Thank you guys. Thank you for your business. Thanks for sticking by us through all this stuff and still coming to hunt with us.
Absolutely.
Because
it's been a lot of fun.
We know you guys have a choice, and we really appreciate your business. Thanks, guys. See you next week.
Have a good night.